All right, welcome everybody to another episode of Talkin Ball Live Giants Q&A with Pat Leonard. I'm the New York Daily News NFL columnist and Giants beat writer. Thanks for joining me. Our Screwball Thursdays, our midweek chats fell by the wayside for a few weeks during the Christmas holiday, New Year's, etc. Had to recharge, a little bit down over how this season has gone. It's just been a grind. It's been a grind. We're almost there. We're almost at the finish line. And I'm here to tell you about what's going on, what's coming, what you can expect from Sunday's Giants Eagles game. How can you interpret certain things that that have happened, that you've seen in the news, that you've seen from the Giants players, what they've said, what they've talked about. I want to download it all. I see you guys here, Michael, Hunter, all the loyal followers back in the chat. Drop your chat questions in there and we'll get started. I wanted to start by telling you about something I thought was pretty interesting that I heard in the locker room today, Thursday, and actually over the last week. Think about this Christmas gift that Daniel Jones, Saquon Barkley, Tommy DeVito, and Tyrod Taylor gave to the offensive linemen. One of the players said it's the best Christmas gift they've ever received. It was a $5,000 travel voucher for every offensive lineman on the team. That's active roster and that's practice squad. So that's the quarterbacks, the three quarterbacks, and Saquon Barkley gifting every offensive lineman on the roster a $5,000 travel voucher. They can take a trip. They can call a travel agency, have it all set up for them. Really an amazing gift, an amazing gesture. Of course, Daniel Jones getting paid last offseason, giving back to his teammates, and Tyrod Taylor, Saquon Barkley, Tommy DeVito, all in it together, rewarding the players who are protecting them and playing in front of them and working so hard every day. And I just thought that was a really interesting nugget about the way this locker room feels about each other, how the players treat each other. And despite the disappointing season and the fact that we all know that the offense has been the team's Achilles heel and it hasn't gone according to plan, but, still a great thing to see how Daniel Jones treats his teammates, how Tyrod Taylor, Tommy DeVito, Daniel, and Saquon got together and rewarded the offensive linemen for their hard work. So very interesting there to me, and reflects really well on the Giants players. Going to tell you about Bet Online first, and then we'll get right into your questions. With the NFL playoffs right around the corner and the NBA season in full swing, Bet Online has you covered with all the up-to-the-second odds, news, and scores. With additional odds, lines, trends, and info on both desktop and mobile, you can access the world's best wagering information anytime. Head there today to get in on the action and see all the updated odds. Remember to use the promo code BELIEVE to receive your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. Bet Online, where the game starts. Where I start is with Hunter saying, how much turnover do you expect Monday? Hunter, I don't know if it's going to happen on Monday, but I do expect significant coordinator turnover for the Giants. It'd be interesting to see how it falls, who's out, who stays, how that's going to play out. Obviously, Brian Daboll, the coordinators have kept it close to the vest during the week, but I think there's no question in my mind that the reporting I have been giving to you guys all along is going to come to fruition, and really doesn't take a rocket scientist to see that this season has gone extremely poorly, worse than even if you knew that the schedule was going to be more difficult. Looking at Brian Daboll and Joe Shane and what it looked like this program might have been turning into in year one, this is just a colossal failure on a lot of different levels, from personnel to coaching to game management to execution, and all the way across the board. And that Rams loss, of course, was just the latest example of why the Giants are bad. Mistakes they make, not only in execution, but in those situational football game management situations. And right now, Brian Daboll doesn't call the plays on offense, doesn't call the plays on defense. Those are under his purview. And you can read a story in the Daily News I wrote for Friday's newspaper about how, that's a concern, right? That's a concern that the offense has been so bad all year that they've given up 83 sacks. This is the stat. The Giants have allowed 83 sacks this year. That is second most all time by an NFL team. That's according to Elias Sports Bureau. The only team that had more was the 1986 Eagles, giving up 104 sacks. The Giants are comfortably in second, though, with 1 week to play. Also, right now, they're averaging 14.9 points per game. They are under 15 points per game right now for the first time since 1979. So they'll see if they can get over that threshold in this Week 18 finale against the Eagles. But that's how bad it's been. And that's one reason I think you can expect significant turnover. Obviously, we saw the reports, and I think it was in November about the tension and the friction between Dable and Martindale. And then obviously with the futility on offense and the really costly mistakes on special teams, and the fact that going into year 3 of this regime, the pressure's on. To me, the pressure's on even in week 18 against the Eagles for Joe Sheen and Brian Dable and this team to show a little bit of progress here, because it really is just, there's not much to hang your hat on right now other than the takeaways that the defense has had down the stretch, right? Have played 3 different quarterbacks. So all of that, Hunter, is to tell you that I do think you're going to see significant changeover coming next week. We'll see if it comes right off the bat. Monday's breakup day schedule is early. We will be there bright and early on Monday morning. Michael says, what are the chances that Saquon Barkley comes back next year? Michael, great question. I think it's more likely Saquon Barkley does not come back. I think that if you read and listen to what he said to us at his locker, and I know you did, I believe that what he was saying in that moment was, I would love the chance to test my value on the market and be in a situation where I'm compensated fairly and have a chance to win. Like that's what I heard. Now Saquon is diplomatic. He carries himself well. He knows how to play that game, right? And he had to play it all off season last spring and summer, and it was exhausting. And he got really frustrated by the end of it because he played it a certain way, and it turns out really he should have been more aggressive and more proactive. But I thought he really went on the offensive. So here's some behind the scenes for you. And, this relates to Barkley. So during his contract negotiation last offseason, he said that he didn't become proactive against, with battling back against leaks or someone else's sources saying, here's what Saquon was offered, until it was too late, in his opinion. And, the way I view it is that him going on the record this quickly and this early in this Wednesday presser and interview with us, the fact that he came out and said that right away, that was him changing his strategy and going on the offensive and saying, here is me putting my foot down before you can say anything to anybody. And what I'm telling you is I'm going to come in on exit interview and breakup day on Monday. I'm going to walk in and I'm going to ask you what your plans are for me, how you see me, where you see my value. And I'm asking you to shoot me straight. He used that phrase, shoot me straight. That would be the fair way to do it. And he wants the Giants to tell him there what their plans are, how they feel about him. He already knows they feel about him differently than the way he feels about himself as far as what his value should be last year. Of course, listen, Saquon likes New York. He wishes, you can tell, and he said this, like he wants to win in New York. He wants to win with the Giants. But I think right now you look at the landscape, you look at what is this team going to look like next year? Even if they draft a young quarterback high, what does the team look like around that quarterback? How long is it going to take for this team to become competitive, for them to be consistently competitive, to believe that you can win? How many years does Saquon Barkley have left? Like all of those things go into the pot. Now, he has said, I still want to be a Giant for life, but I think Saquon was absolutely brutally honest when he said, listen, this might be my last chance to get a second contract, like a big second contract. If I'm going to strike, I have to do it now. I thought the tone of everything he talked about was, hey, if they tag me, there's nothing I can do about it. I'll be back and I'll love to try to help the Giants win again and all that. And he felt like he carried himself well throughout this season. But he does, to me, sound like a player who would like a chance not only to test the market and see what he can get out there, because he believes he knows what he can get on the market, but also he wants to go somewhere. And, this is just my read on it. I think he wants to go somewhere where he can win and prove that in the right spot, he can be the star that he has tried to be and wants to be here in New York. Tuto drops in with the $4.99 super sticker, super chat. Tuto back in the house. Guys, I know I remind you this every week. You probably get tired of it, but this is awesome stuff. Tuto, thank you so much. So what this is a way to support the channel. Obviously, our loyal followers already know, but super chats and super stickers, it's a way to spice up the chat, support what I'm doing here, support these, kind of reinforce for me that this is something everyone's coming to every week, and that to me, what I do is I take the super sticker. If you have a question, if you have a comment, whatever it is, and it jumps right to the top of the feed, and I answer and address it right away, and then I get right back into the queue. It livens it up, and I love the support. I really appreciate it, Tudo. As you know, Tudo says massive salutes and respects to Big Boss Pat and all diehard Giants fans in America. Happy New Year and God blessings to everyone on Pat's show. Tudo, can't thank you enough. Thank you so much. Tudo, obviously, along with everybody else here, one of our biggest supporters. Really appreciate it. All right, and Tudo, if you have any questions, you just drop them in and we'll get right to them. All right, we got Doug saying, did Bobby Johnson also get the voucher? Oh, that's a good question, Doug. Nobody told me that, so I'm not sure. I think that's probably, you know what? I don't know. I was going to say it's probably separate, but like Xavier McKinney got Martindale and Dable those Nike Kobe Grinch sneakers, like the kind of pink and green ones. So it's possible that extended, but that was not articulated to me. Talked to some people today about it just to confirm, and it was told it was all the starting offensive linemen and practice squad offensive linemen, every offensive lineman on the roster, starting, backups, active roster, practice squad, etc. Luann says, hi, Pat. Happy New Year. Hey, Luann. Sorry, all your predictions didn't come to pass, although you did tell us they were going to win some games down the stretch. They won a few there. Would be excited to hear what you think is going to happen against the Eagles. Thanks for always being here, Luann. Hunter says, shows the type of guys the four of them are, pros pro, giving that gift to the linemen, no doubt. He also says, I hope the Giants do the right thing with Saquon. If you can't get a deal done, let him hit the open market. I agree. Obviously, if the Giants let him hit the open market, then you say, well, why didn't you just trade him at the deadline, right? So that would not reflect well on their process there. But also they have shown that they're not ready to pay Saquon what he feels like he's owed. And, let's be fair. I mean, the way the Giants are positioned right now, they're a team that, let's just say they give Saquon Barkley whatever contract he wants. They still don't have the offensive line to get it done. They still don't have a quarterback situation figured out. They still don't have a number one wide receiver. They're still missing pieces on the interior of the defensive line, pass rusher, another corner, et cetera, right? So, I don't think paying Saquon solves all the Giants' ills. And, frankly, like I said, my read on how he's acting and feeling is like he would like to test the market as well. Michael says, do you know what quarterback in the draft the Giants like? Not yet zeroed in on that. We will be hunting that down in the upcoming weeks. I do think that given how highly they are picking, right? And so it's probably going to end up being fifth overall. Like we'll see where the dust settles after this weekend. It's probably going to be fifth, but you can't rule anyone out other than probably Caleb Williams at number one. You got Drake May, you got Jaden Daniels. Those are two names that jump out at you. And somebody on here, one of you guys might have been Michael. One of you guys was telling me, months ago, maybe that Jaden Daniels you thought was the best fit for this coaching staff and this offense. So that'll be interesting to see, but I am not plugged in directly yet to the exact details of who they're planning on taking just yet, but we'll get to that for sure. I will say this to answer your question, Michael. To me, this sets up as a clear quarterback pick right now for me. Like, people say, well, will they really go quarterback? Like, to me, I don't even have any question about it right now. Like, I think it's quarterback or bust for the Giants based on where they sit and the fact that going into next season, like, you know, Shane and Dable is going to be pressure on him to really start turning this around. Getting a new quarterback maybe buys you some more time if he shows promise early. Now it's not going to solve the team's problems next year, right? But so they're really in a tricky predicament. But to me, quarterback makes a lot of sense to me right now. There. Okay. Tudo checks in again with a $4.99 super sticker. He says, Big Boss Pat, damn right. We've got a question, boss. When is Bobby Johnson, Kafka, and the special team coach going to get the hell out of here? Well, Monday might start the process of finding out who's out of here. That's kind of an ongoing process right now of, inching towards that date, Tudo. I do think, it wouldn't surprise me if you see at least 2 out of 3 coordinator changes. I think that the Giants right now are a team that clearly there is disconnect there. There's been tension there throughout the season. And I think that on all 3 sides of the ball, they have to look very closely at whether there needs to be change. I mean, the offense, the interesting thing about the offensive line, and listen, you give up the second most sacks all time, there's probably going to be change there, in NFL history. By the way, sacks as a team stat, they started tracking that stat in 1963. So when I say 83 sacks is second all time, I mean since 1963, which is the year that they started tracking that statistic in the NFL, team sacks allowed. So it's 83 sacks allowed. The only thing I would say in Bobby Johnson's defense is, to me, the personnel this year wasn't good enough. Now, that's like a separate comment to whether he deserves to stay or go. Like, I just think the personnel wasn't good enough, and I'm not sure anyone else would have done way better with the personnel they had this season at offensive line. Also remember, Brian Dable, Shea Tierney, Bobby Johnson, that's like the Buffalo crew, right? So it's possible Bobby ends up getting scapegoated or partially scapegoated along with others for what's going wrong with the offense. But remember, he's also a Dable guy, a Buffalo guy, loyal to Dable. And so, I'm not saying he's definitely staying. I'm just saying if he does, don't be shocked because of that dynamic. Um, you know, Feels to me like there would be a change on special teams with McGahee, but we'll see about that. We'll see. It really feels weird the way they've just taken part of the special teams out of his hands with the kickoffs. And he essentially said that the analytics team was making that decision. They took Paris Campbell out of the lineup. So that one feels like turnover. And then you obviously have the reports of the tension with Martindale and Dable, as well as the futility of offense with Dable and Kafka. But I've said all along that I think there could be 3 coordinator changes. I definitely think at least, 2 out of 3, there's a strong possibility. We'll see if all 3, but 2 out of 3 sounds like the right number at the moment. We will see. But that's a really good question too, though. You're getting to the heart of the matter and really what the story is, right? That's the biggest story right now, is how much change is going to come down. Luann says, Pat, the Giants need to keep the team together. You win championships when the team stays together. Players, coaches, Saquon should be back. Shepard also. Luann, I agree with you on consistency, but I think you'll be disappointed with some of the names you threw out there about whether they should stay. Wouldn't surprise me if Sterling Shepard ended up staying as a part of the franchise, not as a player, right? Like working on staff. John Mara, admitted as much to me that that's something the organization would love to see. And I think that's personally why Shep has played so much ball this year, is because he knows he's got a future in the organization if he plays it right. Giants Chronicles says, here's the thing, Pat. I don't know if Saquon is as valuable to another team as he is to the Giants. I don't see him getting $10 million anywhere else. Watch this happen again. Saquon's agents are going to screw him. Well, he does have new agents representing him now than he did at the start last time. The CAA team and their finance team versus the Rock Nation team that he started with last time, as the primary. So that could go well. I do agree with you that he was more valuable to the Giants, and as they're constituted, than he would be to other hypothetical teams. I think that he could get some security and some good money and also be on a way better team with a lot better prospects of how he's going to fare, the team's going to fare, as he wants his legacy to continue to grow and he wants to win because he wants to win. I mean, he wants to win. I mean, these guys like Saquon who are in the limelight all the time and they have big personalities and big games. Like, there is a star quality about, how they walk into a room and everybody gravitates to them and talks to them and they're viewed as bigger than the next guy and that kind of thing. But like Saquon cares a lot about winning. And that's part of the reason he's so frustrated right now here. And that so many people are so frustrated right now here. So I agree with you that, listen, the money he was looking for last year, right? The 16.5 million a year and, or, whatever, 15, 16, those numbers that we were talking about and throwing out. I agree with you that, especially coming off the way, listen, no one is going to trade off of this Giants offensive season in a positive way. I mean, it's just going to be very difficult to do. If you're on this Giants offense and you're trying to go somewhere else and get paid, it's going to be difficult. Maybe Tyrod sees some money because teams need quarterbacks, but even he has had his share of like ups and downs in these games where he's made some good plays, but then failed to close out. So I don't disagree with you about, value here versus elsewhere necessarily, but I do think he could get something that is fair enough for also going to a better team. But we'll see. We'll see what the Giants are willing to offer him as well. But if they're going to offer him something that's similar, on the lower scale, then he's not confident that the team's going to win next year, and he doesn't know what he's getting himself into. That could create a situation where they go both ways as well. All right, that's a good comment though, Chronicles. Doug says, could you rank your confidence level that these are not with the Giants next year? Okay, not with the Giants. I would say not with the Giants. I would say, so least likely to be back. I would probably say, I don't know. Let's go Wink least likely, McGahee second least likely, Bobby Johnson third least likely, Mike Kafka. Uh, I don't know. Or it could be Wink, McGahee, Kafka, Bobby. Why don't we go that? Yeah, that makes sense. So Wink least likely, Bobby most likely, but that's not to. I'm not saying the guys close to most likely to be back are going to be back. That's not what I'm saying. But you're just asking me on the confidence scale of who's going to stay and who's going to go, and that's where I stand right now. That's a good question. Kenny G says, speaking of X, do you see him on this team next year, McKinney? I do think that he has played well enough for the Giants to want him back. The question is, do you sign him to a multi-year deal, right? Because he's a good player and he's a durable player. Now, I would love to see him get back to the turning the ball over, playmaking, interceptions, forcing turnovers, dynamic type stuff he was doing in, I think that was his second season. But the year that he had the big year with, kind of filling all the boxes and checking all the boxes, I would like to see him become that player again, to be the guy that you're paying a huge chunk of change to. To me, if you're not using the tag on Saquon, you're using it maybe on McKinney rather than paying him on a long-term deal. But the other thing is that's a high salary cap hit on the franchise tag for safeties. And so that's a lot of money too. And you're trying to kind of shed cap space and spend it elsewhere. So maybe the move there is to sign him to a multi-year deal and then just push some money into the future. But his agent is David Mulugeta, who drives a hard bargain and usually gets top dollar for his guys. It'll be interesting to me whether the Giants offer and those negotiations get to a place where McKinney is comfortable, and where it's close enough to what he would see on the market for him to feel like he doesn't need to go test it. I do know that the safety market last year cratered, right? And to me, McKinney is good, but like I said, he's not like Buda Baker right now as far as like how he changes games and things like that. So to me, I think the short answer would be yes, I expect him back on a multi-year deal at this moment, but I can't say that for sure because like Mulugeta represented Landon Collins when he went and got that super deal with Washington and the Giants let him walk. And I'm not sure first of all, a lot of money to spend on the franchise tag for 1 year, and then for a multi-year deal, that would be a lot too. So I think if they can find a middle ground, yes, he definitely has proven that he's worthy of coming back. I would say that. But, like I said, strong agent who's going to try to get him to the market if he can, if the Giants aren't going to come up to the number that he believes or knows that he can get. Luann says Giants will beat the Eagles on Sunday. Whoa. No surprise. Luann is optimistic and confident, but we always love it here on the Talkin' Ball Giants Q&A podcast with Pat Leonard. Love doing these on Thursdays. You notice I don't have my screwball today. I got a little water here, trying to be good. Some New Year's resolutions. Getting fit before we go out on the road on the combine and the owners meetings and all that, hitting that circuit. So we'll see how long it lasts. All right, let's see. Chronicles says, so tell me Shane is going to spend big in free agency and build for the rookie quarterback we have coming in so we can win. Well, listen, this year, whatever money Joe Shane has, like, let's just say hypothetically, like, we think that they're going to draft a quarterback in the first round, then there's going to be no reason to do anything but go for broke if you're Joe Shane and Brian Daboll. Like, this is the year. This is the year where, coming off this past season, you got to figure it out. Like, I know they went to the playoffs last year. I know Brian Daboll won Coach of the Year, but Wing Martindale won like the Assistant Coach of the Year award too. And so, then so what do you know? In November, there's a report from Jay Glazer that there's tension between those guys. It's not sustainable. It might not even last to the end of the season, right? So things can change quickly. And so, I think when you talk about where the Giants stand as a team and as an organization, as a franchise, and what they would be trying to accomplish going into 2024, John Mara, Steve Tisch, like, we know, I mean, they're tired of firing people after 2 years. And so that's going to play into along with the playoff berth last year, kind of buying these guys some time for sure. But, Shane's going to have no reason to like withhold money, right? So what he can spend in free agency, he will spend. There's no question about that. Hunter says, I love Saquon. If we don't pay him, I hope he goes to a team with a great line and watch him eat. Yeah, Hunter, I also think, and this is to Chronicles' point earlier, I think Saquon, he probably wouldn't agree with this because obviously he thinks he's the number one back. And, he is a big time. He can be a big time game changer, but I think he would benefit from going to a place where he could be like part of a two-headed monster, like, look at the Lions with Montgomery and Gibbs. Like, imagine Saquon being part of a backfield where he could carry the ball 12 times, catch the ball 5 or 6 times, and then stay fresh throughout the season as he's working it with that other running back. So then that team goes to the playoffs, and now he's ready to make those big plays in the biggest moments and take his career to the next level and hopefully win that championship, right? Like, that's how I see him fitting in. And to Chronicles' point, what is that worth though, right? You're not paying that player necessarily what you would be paying the back who's going to be your bell cow. So that's kind of the interesting balance that Saquon will have to judge there. Wow, looks like Tuto drops another super sticker. That's 3 in a row from Tuto. Man, someone's got to jump in and follow Tuto's lead here because he is crushing it. Obviously, one of our biggest supporters. He says, Pat, please suit us up in Giants colors. I'll play as the pass rush you've never seen before in your entire career. Also, team captain, and I'll promise you championships. We love it, Tuto. Speaking of that, would love to see Kayvon Thibodeau go out on a high note in this Eagles game. He has, I think, 11 and a half sacks. Obviously produced there, but been really quiet these last 3 games. Would love to see him kind of get back on a high note going into the offseason because he really hasn't made enough of an impact and as much of an impact recently as he did most of the year. All right. Let's see. Bill Hartnett says, other than missing all those things, we look great, right? Yeah, running down the roster. Exactly. And that's how you have to be, though. Like, if you're Joe Shane, you got to be brutally honest with it. And I know, I will give Joe this. Like, he is that. Like, I think, I don't think Shane tricks himself into thinking his team is something other than it is, right? I think that Joe Shane is pretty realistic about what the Giants are. I think he works hard to, publicly portray things as sometimes as being different from what they actually are. And I think that he didn't necessarily take full accountability for the offensive line when we talked about it at the bye week, when obviously that's been a train wreck. But I do think that he sees what you and I are talking about right now about how many gaps there are to fill. There were a lot of gaps to fill when he got here. There's no doubt about it, but that's not an excuse 2 years down the road, especially when you've made things worse in different spots, especially on the line. Luann says, I want Daniel Jones and Saquon to stay together and get a stud wide receiver like Justin Jefferson. Hey, man, that'd be nice. Hunter says, what's your opinion on Michael Penix? I know the injury history. Where do you think he lands pick-wise? Great question. And that's going to be eye of the beholder, injury stuff. I mean, a team like the Giants that struggles to keep guys healthy as it is, taking that risk that high, I mean, that would be a lot. He's also older. I think it's going to be the kind of player who probably slips a little bit because of that injury history. And by slips, I mean, like, if he's good enough to go number 1 or 2, but he goes, you know, 7 or 17 or, something like that. Right. But it's certainly something to be concerned about. I think 2 ACLs, long injury history through his college career. And like I said, been in college a while. So not exactly, the youngest player. So when you're drafting older guys, you're drafting somebody closer to what they're going to be, right? Like it's not easy to project, but if you get a 21-year-old or a 22-year-old, whatever, and you're projecting him out to what he's going to be on 27, he's still growing, he's still developing. But think about John Michael Schmitz, for example. You draft him as a center. Now, the good thing is he's closer to ready versus other linemen you're bringing out of college. And then the other thing you have to remember, though, is he's been in college, what it was, 6 years, I think it was, and his body's still growing and developing. There's no doubt about it. But with a player like that, you're also getting somebody closer to the, finished product. Finished is not the right word, but you know what I mean? It's just somebody who has been playing a lot of football and is now closer to what they're going to be. Let's see. Luann says Wink needs to stay. Players love him. If he's gone, that can upset the team for next year. I agree, especially because that's been the best side of the ball and the only really, encouraging side of the ball this season. Hunter says Shepard should be the wide receiver coach. That's interesting. I'm not calling him CMC, but you put Saquon in an elite system, he's going to go absolutely crazy. That would be fun to watch. Playboy Phil says, I've been saying for 2 years we're getting Caleb Williams. I'm calling it now. The Giants will either tag and trade Saquon or acts as a bargaining chip and 2025 first and 2024 second for the number 1 pick. Phil, that would be amazing. That would be crazy. That would certainly add a ton of juice to this season and this year. I wouldn't put it past Joe Shane to make a move, but I would just caution you with this. The Giants roster needs those draft picks, so I'm not saying I love the situation and the scenario you just painted. And it's certainly possible. Like, I don't shake my head and say there's no way that happens. But I think one thing that Joe Shane's going to be thinking about throughout this process while he entertains those scenarios is also having draft picks available to continue to stack and stock the roster at other key positions to make sure the team's good enough next year that they're competitive and that they don't get run off the field 40-0 in the first week against the Cowboys and things like that. So that's going to have to be a balance, but I love where your head's at. I do think thinking outside the box and thinking about those things, listen, desperation might not be the word, but the Giants are going to be all in my opinion, on finding the right guy. And if you think you found the right guy, you got to go and get him. So I do think you have to entertain those ideas. And I think that's a great contribution to the live chat here. Guys, remember, if you want to chat or a comment or a question elevated to the top of the chat, you can pay for a super sticker or a super chat, help support the podcast, help support what we're doing here on the YouTube page. And, gets me right to your question right away. You jump the queue. And remember, while we're here, the podcast is on wherever you get your podcasts, Apple, Spotify, Overcast, wherever you listen, you can get it. The Talkin' Ball with Pat Leonard podcast. If you missed all of this, we'll be posting the full version on the podcast, feed, on the audio feed. And Remember, you can follow me on TikTok, Instagram, YouTube at PL on NFL. If you don't follow, hit those subscribe buttons, hit those like buttons now, the thumbs up, whatever you can right now, because that engagement also, if you're enjoying your time here, helps YouTube kind of push it to everybody else, gets more engagement, gets more people here. Giants fans get it recommended to them while they're watching other videos about the team, and they come and join us. So thanks for all your support. Let's see. Phil says you can't leave to chance Washington to steal Drake May or Williams. Yeah, no, and I agree. If you find your guy and you know who your guy is in this draft, like you go get him. You just have to be careful about what you give up because of what the rest of the team looks like and needs. Chronicle says, I don't think Saquon is as much of a superstar elsewhere as he is here. I think he's better staying in the big market in New York than just being a running back elsewhere. Yeah, except the team keeps losing and isn't good enough. They can't run the ball. The offensive line isn't built up. They don't have a quarterback that you can count on to be sustainable for the future. I mean, right. So like these are all things that you make a great point, Chronicles, but just I'm playing devil's advocate here. Doug says, do you believe that Jay Glazer report came from Wink's camp? And is the frustration between Wink and Dable football related or more personal relationship, including with the players? I don't know where Jay Glazer's report came from. The frustration, is it football related or personal? We actually asked Martindale about that. He said all of this is about football. Like when he was asked about like the emotional part of it, he said it's all about football and really connected it to the fact that the team is losing. I think he and Joe Shane both said something along the lines of like, nothing's changed. It's just that we're losing. And I think the tension has come from that and the dynamic that goes along with, when people start feeling pressure due to that losing. So that's the best thing I could say there. Let's see. Luann says, we need to pay McKinney. We need to keep Simmons. And Doug, by the way, as we get into next week and whether news happens or not, or who stays and who goes and where this all falls, this will also obviously be a topic worth talking about more and asking more about as we go along with the coordinator situation, the Martindale situation, et cetera. Luann says we need to keep pay McKinney and keep Simmons. We need to keep the defense together. They won 2 Super Bowls because the team stayed together. Coaches too. You're right. Consistency and continuity are good. It's just a question of whether keeping a dynamic together is the right thing if it's not working, right? And so there are elements of the defense that are working for sure. The run defense needs to improve. Martindale said that himself. Simmons, I do think, has been a bright spot. But is he a bright spot for the Giants or a bright spot in the Martindale kind of versatile scheme, right? And so if Martindale stays, then I agree with you that Simmons is a good fit. If Martindale doesn't stay, then I don't necessarily think Simmons will definitely just like plug and play in somebody else's system. So I think that would be a factor there. But like I said, I do agree McKinney has helped himself down the stretch. Daz Merchant says, I think it's important to secure Barkley, not because of his running the ball, but his pass blocking protection. There's still plenty of uncertainty with protection on our quarterback, so keeping him there feels safe. Daz, all due respect, that is not something that Saquon does very well. He's worked hard at it. He does it at times, but he's not particularly good at it. It's not like one of his strongest suits. In fact, I do believe that's one of the reasons that he comes out on third downs often. Hunter says, I agree with you on that too, Pat. Barkley in a dual running back system, keep him fresh. I think our defense has a lot of good building blocks. I think that's decently close to being really, really good. Michael says if we lose Barkley, who the hell will be our running back? That's a good question. That's a good question, Michael. In fact, I was looking at the Giants' offensive touches this season. So check this out. So, all right, New York Giants. Hold on, I was looking at this. I gotta bring up this stat for you because it's staggering. Because I was writing about Barkley yesterday, and I was thinking to myself the exact same question you thought. I said, well, when Barkley leaves, who takes up the mantle, who becomes the focus of the offense, and, what does it look like this year, right? And so let's see. This guy has 268 touches this year, right? So Saquon Barkley has 268 touches this season. Who do you think is second, and how many touches does he have? You guys tell me your answer at the bottom and I'll jump down to it, but we'll get back to that, Michael. Chronicle says Giants need to live by the Joe Shane motto this offseason: scare money, don't make money. We need a superstar edge and a wide receiver one, which we have needed for years. Yep, the team needs both of those things. Michael says, are you concerned that any of these quarterbacks in the draft can handle playing in New York and playing in the cold weather? I think it's certainly a factor. How does your ball look? How strong is it coming uh, out of your hand? Is the ball whistling? Are you accurate? Have you been able to succeed in elements? But really too, like, I'm a big believer in I know the it factor is not something you can quantify, but like Jalen Hurts, some people didn't really grasp his like intangibles during the draft process when he fell to the second round. And obviously you have to have the physical skill set along with it. But I do think that's as important as anything when you come to New York and you're a quarterback drafted in New York. So yes, it's the ability to play in cold weather and to thrive here. It's also the ability to thrive here from a standpoint of being off the field and how you manage yourself and carry yourself and how the team responds to you, really, like how the players and your teammates respond to you. Hunter drops in with the right answer. It is Matt Breida is second in offensive touches. So it's 268 for Saquon, and then it's 72 for Matt Breida. So that's 1-2. So to answer your question, Michael, who would be our running back? The answer is, you have Eric Gray on the roster and then probably somebody else in the draft or like a cheaper veteran that they would sign. It's a really good question that we don't have answered right now. Luann says Shepard should have more playing time. He's a good receiver, just doesn't get the ball. Very strange that he's always active and never plays, isn't it? I don't get it. H5000 says, I'm all for taking a quarterback in the top 5, assuming they can function competently behind our atrocious O-line. Otherwise, no way. I agree. But that's the thing. So if you're Joe Shane and Brian Daboll and you're going into a third season where you really need to start putting it all together and you need to compete and you need to win some games and you need to beat the Eagles and Cowboys for once, do you draft an offensive lineman there and use your second and third round pick on another O lineman or your 2 second round picks on another O lineman and a receiver and hope Daniel Jones gets healthy, stays healthy, and takes another step? Or do you draft that young quarterback and try to buy some time for yourself while also trying to put together through free agency and the rest of the draft, a competitive enough team that the Maras and the Tishes can kind of see the vision, right? Those are the two kind of decisions you have to make there. It's not an easy call. To me, though, Daniel's neck injuries concern me. Like, they just concern me. Like, I think, and especially, listen, Joe Shane took this job seeing a rebuild where there was a chance to draft a quarterback. And now he's going to have a chance to do it. And unless he doesn't like any of these QBs, I think he's going to draft one. Let's see. Oh, so Michael was asking, am I concerned? Am I concerned about any of those quarterbacks being able to throw in the cold? Need to do a deeper dive on those guys. I'm honestly in the next 2 weeks going to have a lot of conversations with people about that kind of stuff. All right. You get into the draft season. All right. Jim says, hey, Pat, have you reviewed the PFF stats on Kayvon? I heard a podcast where he was ranked near the top in sacks in every other category that PFF evaluates linebackers. Have you reviewed the stats and opinion? He ranked in so you're saying he ranked near top in sacks, but in the bottom 10% of all the other categories. I think that's what you're saying. That does not surprise me, Jim, that I did not review all of those stats, but that was what we were talking about earlier, was the fact that I really think I'd love to see him kind of go out on a high note here, because the last several weeks have not been good. He has not been a factor. Obviously has made some big splash plays this season, but concerning that there's been a disappearing act in some of these games as well, especially recently down the stretch. Thanks for providing those stats to support kind of the observations that we've been talking about. That's helpful. And I think, Jim, the question about like, what does that mean is like, it's funny. Last year, I felt like Kayvon's edge setting, run defense, and everything was the better part of his game. And then he wasn't, getting to the quarterback enough, wasn't finishing enough, right? This year, it's like he finished more at the quarterback, but the rest of his game was not what it was last year, is how the best way I could put it. So I think he's got to put both together. Let's see. Hunter says, Pat, if you get a chance to watch and scout running backs, watch for Dylan Laub out of New Hampshire. He's projected as a 5th-round pick. I think he could climb. Thank you, Hunter. I will write his name down right now. So let's see. Dylan Laub from UNH, 5th rounder. Look at Hunter. Get me started on my draft prep. Love it. Chronicles with a great question. What is it like covering Jihad Ward? Man, it's an adventure. This season was a little disappointing. Once he went off on Aaron Rodgers and the Jets in the preseason, someone from the Giants shut him down. That coupled with all the attention he got from that, he kind of secluded himself and didn't really talk for a while in the locker room. Kind of was a huge loss for the media in that regard. Eventually reemerged with his shiny personality and his loud boombox. I love dealing with Hadi. Hadi, if you guys didn't check it out already, I did a story for the Daily News website a day or two ago about some of the incentives that these players are playing for in week 18. And Jihad Ward is a guy who actually realistically can earn an extra $500K in the Giants finale against the Eagles if he ups his snap percentage a bit and if he gets one more sack. So it'd be $250K for the one, $250K for the other. So that's something to watch out for. After the chat, go check the story out on the Daily News website. There's Darius Slayton, Ashawn Robinson, Jihad Ward, and I think Matt Breida all have different incentives that they can hit. Let's see. The reason I made that analogy, Phil says, because if Washington is number 2, you can't leave to chance Washington possibly stealing your guy. No, yeah, for sure. No, you make a good point, Phil. I get it. And I think the way you're thinking is the way people have to think, right? Like, especially if you're a general manager, you have to go through all those permutations. So that's why there's always the game of trying to figure out what other teams are doing, because you want to see like who's still going to be on the board, which teams are going to trade out. So who's going to try to trade over you? Like it's all of that. But you're absolutely right. In division too, that's another factor. That's a really good point. Doug had guessed that Wandale was second in touches. I think he is third, Doug. So that's a good guess. Yeah, so it's 268 for Saquon, Matt Breida 72 offensive touches, Wandale 64, Darren Waller 47, Darius Slayton 45, and Daniel Jones 40. Let's see. Hunter says, I just looked it up too. Much higher end running backs. AJ Dillon is a free agent. I wouldn't mind him on a decent deal. Yeah, but not a number one, like handle a full workload, pass catching all the time guy. Kyle Gata says, with the current circumstances, Saquon needs to walk. This franchise paid Daniel last year, and we are now talking about drafting a quarterback, paying a running back. Even Saquon is not an option. Kyle, I agree with that. I think you make a really good point. The Giants made their bed. And, like I said earlier, I do think that, I think it was Luann or somebody asked me earlier whether it would be Daniel Jones and Saquon back next season. And actually said this on Pat Callahan's show too on YouTube. We did one earlier. I just don't see Saquon. If I had to make a call right now, I would think Saquon would be playing elsewhere, not here. That's a great comment, Kyle. And Kyle, thank you for that contribution too. That's a really intelligent, informed comment. And, that's a really good contribution to the chat. I really do appreciate it. Hope you keep joining us on these. And, this is informative, and I'm trying to bring information to you guys, but also like comments like that, contributions like that really add to the conversation because it really lays it all out. And sometimes here I am telling you what I know, and I'm trying to lay it all out for you guys too, but that's as well said as it could be. So nice work, Kyle. All right. Chronicle says Slayton Higgins or Pittman, Hyatt and Wandale for a wide receiver core. Yeah, I mean, they need a number one. So you got to go get a number one. I totally agree. Chronicles says, think we cut Waller for cap money. Seems like a waste of money. He's always injured in his hammies or quads. That's definitely something to examine in the offseason. Certainly hasn't worked out. Do you think Dable makes it an emphasis to give players the chance to reach their incentives, like giving Ward the majority of snaps, says Doug? I think that would probably go to the play callers, right? I mean, maybe Dable as well, but you have like Kafka on offense and, even up to Joe Shane, frankly, with player usage, like if Matt Breida has to play a lot to get an incentive to Saquon Barkley play less, so that happens. And then how did Joe Shane and Brian Dable make the game plan around that? And certainly you got to think that, Wink Martindale would try to turn Jihad Ward loose and that, that if they know about that, if Brian Dable knows about that and Wink Martindale knows about it, you have to think that they would try to scheme up something to get him that sack. So that's something to watch out for sure. What was your opinion on the whole Pro Bowl voting? Glad Dexter made it, but mad Bobby didn't make it over Bobby Wagner. Yeah, Hunter, I think Okereke, I talked to him about it today. Basically, you got to leave no doubt. Obviously, there's still the all pro voting coming out. We'll see how it comes out there. Maybe he ends up making, one of the all pro teams, which of course, even though Pro Bowl voting is, counts, is not as important as the all pro. All pro is the one that stands out and is the real list. So we'll see about that. But, Bobby understands and players understand if your team doesn't win, it's hard to get on those lists. It's hard, and as well as he's played, he didn't leave no doubt about it. And so he's going to work hard. But I agree. I think it's hard to have a season like that and not get that recognition. You'd rather be all pro. All pro is the one that counts more. Although Bobby had a $500,000 bonus in his contract if he made the Pro Bowl on the original ballot. So that's the real kicker there and the one that hurts. He would have made $500,000 extra if he had made the Pro Bowl, and he didn't. Chronicle says, have you talked to sources about Barkley in the front office or the Giants? I know how they think about Barkley. I can't tell you at this moment whether, I find it hard to believe that meeting would just go as like, hey, take a walk, right? Like, I think there would be a conversation about where they see his value, where they see him fitting, and where he sees it as well. It's possible the conversation would end with, wow, we're nowhere close and let's just move in a different direction, or let's revisit as we get closer to March and see where we go. Like, John Mara feels strongly about Saquon Barkley. The Giants organization feels strongly about Saquon Barkley. They understand that as a leader of the team, as a face of the franchise and all that, if he goes, who replaces him there, all those things, they feel, they love him as a person in their organization. But clearly with Joe Shane running the show, especially, there's only so far they're going to go. And, as Kyle pointed out, there's just certain ways that you can't build a team if you're trying to turn things around. So I think all the factors are going to lead to him being on another team next season, but we'll see how it goes on Monday. Let's see. Okay, a couple more questions and we're going to wrap up. This has been an awesome return to the Thursday night Q&A. Doug says, are you or Kayvon aware of the 5th-year option increase for players within their first 3 years of experience that make the Pro Bowl? I think it's like a $5 million increase on the 5th-year option. Interesting. No, I did not know about that. So you're saying if the guy makes it only once in his first 3 years, that it ups his 5th-year money? Is that what you're saying? Interesting. Well, Kayvon's only a third alternate though, so he's not a Pro Bowler, but that's interesting. Hunter says, so if he was to make it as an injury replacement player, he won't get to 500K. No, but if Bobby makes it as a replacement player, he will not make that $500,000 bonus. It had to be on the original ballot. Chronicle says, I just think Saquon is more valuable to the Giants than anyone else. Yep. Nope. That's fair. Just a question of what kind of team they're going to be able to build next year. Okay, Doug says you can find it on Over the Cap. I will look into that. Guys, you guys have been awesome as always. Tudo, thank you so much for the super stickers and the super chats. Thank you for the engagement. We're going to keep these rolling in the off season. I know Joe, one of our loyal followers, was here one of the last times was saying that he wants to see more. He thinks fans will want to see more of these. So I want to keep them regular, especially in the off season. Tell you guys what I'm hearing. Things like that nugget about Daniel Jones and the quarterbacks and Saquon Barkley buying those $5,000 a piece travel vouchers for the offensive linemen on the active and practice squad roster for Christmas, and on about news and notes and nuggets coming out. Promise you I'll have a lot for you. Post game, Giants, Eagles on Sunday. I'll have even more for you on Monday at breakup day, and on we go. We might even have to have an emergency live Q&A depending on what goes down next week, but stay right here on the YouTube page, on Twitter for news breaking, on Instagram as well. It's P Leonard NYDN on Twitter, at PL on NFL, YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, and nydailynews.com, and the Talkin' Ball podcast with Pat Leonard. Thank you so much, guys. Really appreciate it. And let's see, we'll go out on this. Chronicle says it's been real. Hunter says, thanks again, Pat. See you Sunday. Appreciate it. Tudo with the flex live from the combine. Chronicle says, yeah, let's do it. Let's go live from the combine in February. Why not? Hunter says, I'd be interested anytime in live interactions. Kyle says, first time, look forward to tuning in the future. Kyle, thanks for being here. And I hope you come back, because that was a great contribution. And we love it here. Look at Doug digging into the CBA, Article 7, Section 7G. Look at this legend. Wow. Love it. Love it. Look at us doing like a group project here, huh? Guys, we are brought to you by Bet Online and also by Estate 98 Coffee, Esencia de Cafe from El Salvador. Dates back to 1798 at Estate 98 Coffee. And again, this is Pat Leonard signing off. Thanks so much. See you next time.